The moment Eleanor Drake saw the girl's necklace, her breath caught in her throat. 1 second, she was lifting her crystal wine glass toward her lips. The next, she was frozen, eyes locked on the gold pendant resting just below the girl's collarbone. A delicate crescent moon, etched with a single letter. A. Across the table, her 16-year-old son Ryan was smiling as if nothing in the world could be wrong. "Mom, Dad, this is Ayla," he said, his voice light. Ayla offered a polite smile. "It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Drake," she said softly, her tone even despite the strange stillness in the air. Eleanor didn't respond. Her gaze didn't move from the necklace. At the head of the long mahogany table, Benjamin Drake cleared his throat, trying to break the tension. "And how did you two meet?" he asked. "At the Riverside Community Center," Ryan answered quickly. "She teaches robotics to the younger kids. That's where I volunteer." "That's impressive," Benjamin murmured with a practiced smile. Eleanor finally blinked and set her wine glass down without taking a sip. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm but brittle, and rose from her chair. She didn't look at anyone as she walked away, her movements stiff. One hand reached up, brushing against her blouse, not for composure, but for the chain hidden beneath it. In the privacy of the master bedroom, Eleanor shut the door, locked it, and crossed to the antique jewelry box on her dresser. Her hands shook as she opened it. Beneath strands of pearls and diamonds lay a necklace nearly identical to the one Ayla wore. The same crescent moon, the same letter A. She hadn't seen that symbol in nearly 2 decades. Back in the dining room, Ryan filled the silence with nervous chatter. "She's applying to Columbia next year," he said eagerly. "I've always liked solving puzzles," Ayla added, giving Benjamin a small, polite smile. "That's a beautiful necklace," Benjamin said casually. "Family heirloom?" Ayla looked down at it. "Actually, no. I don't know where it came from." "You don't?" he asked. "I grew up in foster care," Ayla explained. "The necklace was the only thing found with me as a baby." The room went still. Benjamin's eyes flicked toward the doorway, where Eleanor had disappeared. Ayla didn't notice. She was still staring at the gold charm, unaware that it had just cracked open a door no one in that house wanted to walk through again. Upstairs, Eleanor stood at the bathroom sink, cold water running over her wrists. Her breath was shaky, uneven. She hadn't let herself think about that night in years, the rain, the shouting, the decision she'd sworn to bury forever. When she returned to the dining room, her expression was calm but pale. She took her seat and forced a tight smile. "Everything okay?" Ryan asked. "Of course," Eleanor replied, her tone smooth but hollow. Then she turned to Ayla. "Have you ever tried to find your birth parents?" Ayla hesitated, the question catching her off guard. "I used to," she admitted. "But I stopped when someone told me to let it go." Benjamin leaned in slightly. "Someone told you that?" "Yes," Ayla said, her voice quieter now. "I was 15. I filed a request for non-identifying records, and the next week I got a typed note in the mail. No return address, just one sentence. Stop digging. Some graves are sealed for a reason." The air seemed to thicken. Ryan looked from Ayla to his parents, sensing something but not knowing what. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her wine glass. "And you just stopped?" Eleanor asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I figured maybe my parents were dangerous or powerful," Ayla replied. "So I let it go, told myself the past didn't matter." Ryan reached for Ayla's hand under the table. "It matters," he said quietly. Benjamin's gaze returned to the necklace. "You said it came with you as a baby. Do you still have the paperwork from the system?" Ayla nodded. "Only a copy." "Why?" Benjamin's voice came a little too fast. "Would you let us see it?" Ayla glanced between them, puzzled. "Sure, it's at my apartment." Eleanor's voice was sharper now, cutting through the room. "I want to see it tonight." An hour later, Ryan pulled his car into a narrow side street on the south end of the city. The contrast from the Drake penthouse was almost jarring. Dim streetlights, uneven sidewalks, the faint hum of traffic in the distance. In the passenger seat, Eleanor sat stiffly, her gaze fixed forward. Benjamin was in the back, silent. "This is it," Ryan said as he parked. His voice carried a mix of excitement and confusion, as though he still believed this was just a normal evening meeting, someone new. Ayla opened the front door before they could knock. "Sorry it's small," she said with a shrug as they stepped inside. The place was spotless, books lined neatly on a short shelf, a potted plant on the windowsill, and a small desk in the corner with an aging laptop charging. "It's cozy," Ryan said, smiling at her. Eleanor didn't respond. She followed Ayla into the bedroom, her eyes scanning every detail as if the walls might hold answers. "It's here," Ayla said, kneeling to pull a slim manila folder from a fireproof box beneath her bed. She handed it to Eleanor. "It's not much, just intake notes and a faded hospital report." Eleanor opened the folder with unsteady fingers. The first page bore the hospital's letterhead. "Female infant, African American, approximately 5 days old, found abandoned near Riverside Shelter, wearing crescent moon necklace. No injuries, no witnesses." Her breath caught as she turned the page. The next sheet was a social worker's note, dated 2007. Infant appeared healthy. Anonymous caller reported location. Caller's voice, female, mid-30s, possibly educated. Caller refused to give a name. Said, "She's safer without me." Benjamin stepped closer, his voice low as he asked, "Do you recognize this?" Eleanor didn't look up. She stared at the page as though it might swallow her whole. Ryan glanced between them. "What's going on, Mum?" For a moment, Eleanor said nothing. Then, in a voice almost too soft to hear, she admitted, "It was me." Ayla blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "What do you mean, it was you?" she asked. Eleanor closed the folder, her hands trembling. "I made the call," she said. "I left the necklace." Ryan's voice rose in disbelief as he asked, "Why are you talking like you knew her?" Eleanor finally looked at him. "Because I did." She paused, forcing the words out. "I was 20 years old in college. I wasn't ready. My parents told me if I kept the baby I'd lose everything. So I left her. I thought she'd be adopted." Ayla's arms crossed tightly over her chest. "You abandoned me." "I hated myself for it every day," Eleanor replied, her voice breaking. Ryan stepped back, his mind spinning. "You're saying, Ayla, she might be my sister?" Eleanor's gaze dropped. "She may be." The air in the small bedroom turned heavy. Ayla looked from Ryan to Benjamin and then back to Eleanor, searching for some sign this was all a mistake. Benjamin spoke quietly, but his question cut through the room. "Are you sure?" Eleanor hesitated, then shook her head slowly. "Not without proof." Ayla's voice was tight when she said, "And what exactly would proof look like?" "A DNA test," Benjamin answered for her, his tone steady but firm. Ayla stared at him, then at Eleanor. "And if it's true?" Eleanor swallowed hard. "Then I owe you more than I can ever repay." The silence that followed was sharp and unyielding. Ryan looked at Ayla, his voice lower now. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to." Ayla met his eyes. "I want the truth." They left Ayla's apartment in silence. Ryan drove, his hands tight on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead. In the rearview mirror, Eleanor sat staring at the manila folder she hadn't let go of since Ayla had handed it to her. Benjamin's gaze was on the city lights passing by, but his mind was elsewhere. Back at the penthouse, the tension followed them inside like an unwelcome shadow. Ryan set his keys on the counter and turned toward his mother. "So what now?" he asked, his voice sharp with confusion. Eleanor didn't answer right away. She opened the folder again as though staring at the words could somehow change them. Benjamin stepped closer to her, speaking low so Ryan wouldn't hear. "We can't leave this hanging. If you're wrong, it will destroy her. If you're right—" He didn't finish the sentence. Eleanor's reply was barely a whisper when she said, "Then I abandoned my daughter twice, once when she was born, and again tonight when I couldn't face her." Ryan's voice cut through the room. "If we're doing this, we do it now." Eleanor turned to him, her tone steady but guarded. "We need a DNA test." Benjamin stepped in, agreeing. Privately. No court records, no publicity. Ryan didn't hesitate. "I'll handle it," he said, already pulling his phone from his pocket. The next day, Ryan arrived at Ayla's apartment alone. She opened the door slowly, her eyes wary. He held out a small, sealed envelope. "It's from a private lab," he explained. "They'll come here. No one else needs to know." Ayla didn't take the envelope right away. "You still think I might be your sister?" she asked quietly. "I don't know what to think," Ryan admitted, shifting his weight. "But I know I want the truth." Her eyes searched his for a moment before she finally reached out and took the envelope. "Whatever it is," she said, "I can handle it." 2 days later, a man from the lab arrived with a small case. Ayla sat at her kitchen table while he prepared the swabs. He spoke little, his movements precise and impersonal. She tried not to think about what the results might say. When it was over, he closed the case and stood. "We'll have the results in 3 business days," he said, then left without another word. Ayla sat still for a long time after the door closed. The apartment was too quiet, every sound amplified, the ticking of the wall clock, the faint hum of her refrigerator. She glanced toward her desk where the necklace rested, its gold catching the light. That night Eleanor stood on the balcony of the penthouse looking out over the city. Benjamin joined her, leaning on the railing. "How are you holding up?" he asked. She didn't look at him when she answered. "I keep thinking about the day I walked away. I told myself it was the only way. But I've never believed that." Benjamin kept his voice level. "If the test says she's yours, you'll have to tell her everything." Eleanor finally turned toward him. "And if it says she's not, then you can let it go," Benjamin said simply. Eleanor shook her head. "I don't think I could." 3 days later, Ayla sat at her desk with her laptop open. The email from the lab had arrived. She stared at the subject line for a long time before she clicked. 99.9% probability of direct maternal relationship to Eleanor Drake. No paternal match to Benjamin Drake. Her throat felt tight as she read it again, then again. The words didn't change. In another part of the city, Eleanor's phone buzzed. She read the same message and closed her eyes. The truth she had feared was now undeniable. She stood for a long moment, the weight of it pressing down on her, before picking up her own necklace from the jewelry box. She held it in her palm, its shape familiar and heavy. The rooftop garden was quiet that evening, the city humming far below. Eleanor waited there, knowing Ayla might not come. The sun had already set when Ayla stepped out of the elevator onto the rooftop garden. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. Eleanor was seated on a bench beneath the glass awning, her hands clasped tightly around something small. She didn't look up until Ayla was standing a few feet away. "You wanted to see me," Ayla said, her voice steady but guarded. Eleanor nodded, gesturing for her to sit. "Thank you for coming." Ayla didn't sit. "The test results came in," she said. "I know," Eleanor replied quietly. "I saw them too." There was a long pause before Ayla asked, "Why didn't you tell me right away? Why all the questions, the pressure?" Eleanor's eyes lowered. "Because I wasn't sure until now, and I was afraid of what it would mean." "It means you're my mother," Ayla said, the words sharp in the cool air. Eleanor flinched but didn't look away. "Yes, I am. And I wasn't there when you needed me most." Alia's arms folded across her chest. "You weren't there at all." Eleanor took a slow breath. "I was 20, in my second year of college. My parents told me I would lose everything if I kept you. I believed them. I was scared, selfish, and I made the worst choice of my life. I left you near the shelter because I thought you'd be adopted by a family who could give you more than I could." "You could have kept me," Ayla said, her voice breaking for the first time. "You could have tried." "I know," Eleanor replied, her own voice trembling, "and I will carry that regret for the rest of my life." From the rooftop doorway, Benjamin's voice came low but firm. Eleanor, she deserves to hear all of it. Eleanor's shoulders tensed. Not now, she said without turning. Ryan appeared behind his father, his face pale. I deserve to hear it too, he said, stepping closer. Are you telling me Ayla is my sister? Eleanor's gaze darted to him, then away. She's my daughter. But she's not your sister by blood. Ryan's brow furrowed. Then who? Benjamin cut in gently. It doesn't matter right now. It matters to me, Ayla said, her voice rising slightly. You're saying I've gone my whole life not knowing who my father is, and you're still keeping that from me. Eleanor stood abruptly, the small object in her hands catching the light. It was the second crescent moon necklace. She stepped toward Ayla and held it out. I had two made. One for me, one for the baby I thought I'd never see again. I kept it because some part of me hoped this day would come. Ayla looked at the necklace but didn't take it. I don't need it to know who I am. I know, Eleanor said, her voice softening. But I'm asking you to take it anyway, not as a reminder of what I did, but as a promise for what I'll try to be from now on. Ryan stood silently, his gaze shifting between them. Ayla finally reached out and took the necklace, closing her hand around it without putting it on. I'm not forgiving you, she said. I'm not asking for that, Eleanor replied. I'm asking for a chance. The rain began to fall lightly, tapping against the glass above them. Ayla stepped back, slipping the necklace into her pocket. We'll see, she said, before turning toward the elevator. Eleanor remained on the bench, watching her go, the sound of the rain growing louder. Benjamin stood beside her, his voice low. She came tonight. That's more than I expected. Eleanor didn't answer. She sat with her hands clasped, staring at the empty space where Ayla had been. The rain had stopped by morning, but the heaviness between them lingered. Ryan stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee he didn't really want. He heard footsteps and turned to see Benjamin enter, phone in hand. Any word from her? Benjamin asked, setting the phone down on the counter. Ryan shook his head. No, I doubt she wants to talk to me right now. Benjamin studied his son for a moment. She doesn't hate you, Ryan. She just doesn't know what to do with any of this yet. Eleanor entered then, her hair pulled back, face pale but composed. We should give her space, she said, though her tone lacked conviction. Ryan looked at her carefully. And what about you? You planning to give her space too? Eleanor avoided his eyes. I'll reach out when the time is right. The time was last night, Ryan said, setting his cup down harder than necessary. You asked for a chance and she didn't say no. But she's not going to wait forever. Benjamin stepped between them before the exchange could escalate. Let's not push this. Everyone needs to breathe. Later that afternoon, Ryan found himself outside Ayla's apartment again. She opened the door slowly, surprised to see him. What are you doing here? She asked. He held up a small envelope. The lab sent me a physical copy of the results, he said. Figured you might want it for your records. Ayla hesitated before taking it. Thanks. Ryan lingered, his hand still on the doorframe. I also wanted to say I'm sorry for how all this happened. You didn't do anything, Ayla replied, tucking the envelope under her arm. I didn't stop it either, Ryan said quietly. Ayla studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. You can come in if you want. Inside, the apartment looked the same as before, tidy, warm in its own modest way. Ryan noticed the necklace Eleanor had given her lying on the desk. You're not wearing it, he said. I'm not ready to, Ayla answered, sitting down at the table. Ryan took a seat across from her. She's not ready either, he said. But that doesn't mean she doesn't want to be. Ayla leaned back, folding her arms. Wanting and doing aren't the same thing. I know, Ryan admitted. But I think she's scared she's already lost her chance with you. Maybe she has, Ayla said, though her voice didn't carry much conviction. They sat in silence for a while before Ayla asked, Did she ever tell you about your father? Ryan shook his head. No. But if you think it's because she doesn't care, you're wrong. She carries every choice she made like a weight around her neck. Ayla's gaze shifted toward the necklace on the desk. Good, she said quietly. Because I've carried the weight of those choices my whole life. That evening, back at the penthouse, Eleanor stood on the balcony again, staring at the skyline. Benjamin joined her, hands in his pockets. You're thinking about her, he said. I can't stop, Eleanor admitted. Benjamin turned toward her. Then do something about it. She shook her head slowly. She needs to make the next move. If I push, she'll run. Benjamin studied her face. Or she might just be waiting for proof that you won't disappear again. The words stayed with her long after he went inside. 3 days later, an email from the lab arrived in Ayla's inbox, a follow-up, this time with detailed breakdowns. She opened it without hesitation, scanning the lines she already knew but couldn't stop reading. When she finished, she reached for her phone. Her thumb hovered over Eleanor's number for a long time before she pressed call. Eleanor's phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen and froze when she saw Ayla's name. For a second, she considered letting it go to voicemail, but then she pressed answer. Hello, she said, her voice careful. It's me, Ayla replied. Her tone was flat, but there was no hostility. Eleanor waited, not wanting to push. I read the full report, Ayla continued. It doesn't tell me anything I didn't already know, but it's different seeing it there in black and white. Eleanor nodded to herself. I understand. No, Ayla said. I don't think you do. You lived your life knowing what happened. I've spent mine not knowing anything. I think that's worse. I'm sorry, Eleanor said quietly. I wish I could change it. Ayla hesitated before asking, Were you ever going to tell me who my father is? Eleanor's grip tightened on the phone. I don't know if telling you would help you or hurt you more. He's not someone I want in your life. That's not your choice to make, Ayla said, her voice firm now. Eleanor closed her eyes. Maybe not, but I'm asking you to trust me on this. There was a long silence before Ayla spoke again. I don't know if I can trust you at all. I'll earn it, Eleanor promised. Later that night, Eleanor sat alone in the rooftop garden, holding her necklace in one hand. She traced the curve of the crescent moon with her thumb, thinking about the years she had missed. Benjamin found her there. She called, he said, not asking but stating. Yes, Eleanor replied. She wanted answers I couldn't give. Benjamin studied her face. Couldn't or wouldn't? Eleanor looked away. Both. The following week, Eleanor decided to act. She called a meeting with the board of the Drake Foundation, proposing a new scholarship initiative for young women from the foster system who wanted to study technology. One board member frowned and asked, Why this specific focus? Because it matters, Eleanor answered simply, and because I should have done something like this a long time ago. A few days later, Ayla received an email invitation to the foundation's upcoming press launch. She almost deleted it, but the subject line caught her eye, the Aurora Lane Initiative. She opened it and saw the short note at the bottom, Hope you'll come, E. She debated for 2 days before showing up. The event hall was bright, filled with cameras and neatly dressed guests. At the front, Eleanor stood behind a podium, her posture perfect, but her eyes searching the crowd. When she spotted Ayla near the back, something in her expression softened. During the speech, Eleanor spoke about opportunity, second chances, and the courage to face the past. She didn't mention names, but every word seemed aimed at one person. After the applause, Ryan took the microphone. She's not my sister by blood, he said to the crowd, but I'd be proud if she was. The audience responded with a wave of clapping and murmurs. Ayla stayed at the edge of the room, unsure whether to approach. Eleanor didn't force it, she simply waited, speaking to others but glancing toward Ayla when she could. Eventually, Ayla stepped forward. It's a good program, she said when she reached her. Eleanor's smile was small, but genuine. It's a start. They stood there for a moment, the noise of the event swirling around them, neither ready to say more but neither walking away. The city was deep in twilight when Eleanor received a short text from Ayla. I can come by. She didn't reply, just made her way up to the rooftop garden and waited on one of the benches beneath the glass awning. The wind was cool, carrying the low hum of traffic from far below. 15 minutes later, Ayla stepped out from the elevator. Her hands were in her jacket pockets, and her expression was unreadable. She stopped a few steps away and said, "You wanted to meet, so I came." Eleanor nodded, gesturing to the bench beside her. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Ayla admitted. "But I remembered what you said the first night we met about the necklace. I figured I should hear you out one last time." Eleanor reached into her coat and pulled out a small velvet box. She held it carefully, as though it might break. "I had two made," she began. "One for me and one for the baby I thought I'd never see again." Ayla's eyes dropped to the box. "You've kept it all this time?" she asked. "Yes," Eleanor said, "because some part of me always hoped." Eleanor opened the box and revealed the second crescent moon necklace, identical to the one Ayla had found around her own neck as a newborn. She held it out, her voice quiet. "I'm not giving this to erase what happened. I'm giving it to you because I want you to know I choose to be here now." Ayla hesitated before taking the necklace from her hand. She studied it for a moment, then closed her fingers around it. "I don't need it to remember who I am," she said. "I know," Eleanor replied. "But maybe it can remind you that people can change." They sat in silence for a while, the sound of the wind filling the space between them. Finally, Ayla asked, "Why the scholarship? Why now?" "Because I can't change the past," Eleanor answered, "but I can make something better for someone else, and maybe for us too." Ayla looked at her, searching for any sign of insincerity. "It's going to take more than money to fix this," she said. "I'm not trying to buy anything," Eleanor said firmly. "I'm trying to show up the way I should have before." From the rooftop doorway, Benjamin appeared but didn't step forward. "She's not your mistake," he called gently. "She's your miracle." Eleanor glanced at him briefly before turning back to Ayla. "He's right. You are." Ayla stood, slipping the necklace into her pocket. "I'm not ready to call this family," she said, "but I'm not walking away either." "That's enough for me," Eleanor said, rising to her feet. Ryan arrived just as Ayla was heading toward the elevator. "You're leaving already?" he asked, his voice carrying both surprise and disappointment. "I'll be back," Ayla replied without slowing down. Ryan glanced at his mother. "That sounds like a start," he said quietly. Eleanor watched the elevator doors close, her chest tightening, not with fear this time, but with the fragile weight of possibility. She turned to Benjamin, who was still standing by the doorway. "I'm not going to waste this chance," she told him. Benjamin gave a small nod. "Then don't." The wind picked up slightly, rattling the glass above them. Eleanor closed the velvet box, now empty, and slipped it into her coat pocket. She didn't need to keep it anymore. 3 months later, the Drake Foundation's main hall was buzzing with reporters, donors, and invited guests. Large banners announced the launch of the Aurora Lane Initiative, a scholarship program for young women in foster care pursuing careers in technology. Cameras flashed as people mingled, but Eleanor stood off to the side, scanning the crowd. She didn't have to look for long. Ayla entered quietly through a side door, dressed simply, her hair pulled back. She spotted Eleanor almost immediately, and though she didn't smile, she walked toward her. "I didn't think you'd come," Eleanor said as Ayla reached her. "I almost didn't," Ayla replied, "but I wanted to see if you'd actually go through with it." Eleanor gestured to the room around them. "Here it is. It's real." Ryan appeared from behind the podium, grinning when he saw Ayla. "Glad you made it," he told her warmly. When the speeches began, Eleanor took the stage first. Her voice was steady as she spoke about second chances, opportunity, and the need to invest in the futures of those who often go unseen. She didn't tell her personal story, but she didn't have to. Her words carried the weight of it. Then Ryan stepped up to the microphone. He looked out over the audience and said, "She's not my sister by blood, but I'd be proud if she was." The room went quiet for a moment before the applause began, swelling until it filled the hall. Ayla stood near the back, her arms crossed loosely, watching the people around her respond. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of something that wasn't anger. After the ceremony, Eleanor found her in the corner of the mentorship wing, where a group of young girls were gathered around a workbench with small robots. Isla was kneeling next to one of them, guiding a shy 12-year-old through troubleshooting a circuit. "You see this wire?" Ayla said gently, pointing to the small tangle. "If it's not connected right here, the whole thing won't work." The girl nodded, her face lighting up when the robot's lights flickered back on. "It works," she said, her voice full of excitement. Eleanor stayed back, watching from the hallway. Benjamin joined her, his hands in his pockets. "You're proud," he said quietly. "Yes," Eleanor replied without taking her eyes off Ayla. Benjamin's gaze followed hers. "She's not your mistake," he said, his voice steady. "She's your miracle." Eleanor let the words settle. For the first time, she didn't feel the instinct to argue or correct them. When Ayla finally noticed Eleanor standing there, she straightened and walked over. "I'm not wearing both necklaces yet," she said, almost teasing. "That's fine," Eleanor replied. "One step at a time." Ayla tilted her head slightly. "I don't know if I'm ready to call this family, but I think I'm ready to see where it goes." "That's all I could ask for," Eleanor said. They stood there in a quiet corner of the bustling event, not needing to fill the silence. The sound of laughter from the girls at the workbench drifted over to them, mingling with the hum of conversation and the faint click of cameras. Later, as the event wound down, Eleanor noticed Ayla slipping the second crescent moon necklace from her pocket. She fastened it around her neck without ceremony, letting it rest beside the one she had worn since childhood. When Eleanor saw it, she didn't speak. She simply smiled, the moment sealing itself in her mind. The city lights outside the foundation's windows began to glow as the sun dipped below the horizon. Inside, for the first time in a long time, Eleanor felt the strange, fragile certainty that healing was possible. Not perfect, not quick, but real. And as Ayla turned back to help another young girl with her robot, Eleanor understood that the past would always be there, but it no longer had to define what came next.